All right. Well, hey everyone, welcome to the biweekly Marquez community meeting. Today we're going to be demoing the work that we've been doing with Airflow and Marquez. So what I'm going to do is first share my screen, and then I'm going to outline really quick. Oops, sorry. The PR is a bit work in progress, but the plan is to merge it sometime in the coming days. So the one thing that we're going to be doing is going over the Docker Compose file. So like really what services we're setting up. So if you go into our Marquez example Airflow, we're going to start looking at ways to use Marquez to debug Airflow DAG issues. So here, this is kind of the doc that I've been working on with a bit of a quick start and outlines a little bit more about what Airflow is. So just for newcomers that aren't familiar with Airflow or just starting out, we're going to make sure that you kind of have the right context and at the same time author your own DAG. But for this particular demo that I'm going to do, I'm just going to bring up all the services that we need. So in the quick start, you can just copy the Docker up script, and I'm going to run that locally. So we're going to bring up Postgres. We're going to bring up Redis as needed for Airflow, but as well as Marquez. Marquez needs a Postgres backend. So here you're going to start seeing Marquez being spun up, and also the Airflow scheduler and Airflow worker. So this is going to take a bit. It's also going to install the Marquez Airflow library. So if I head over and I look at the Docker Compose file, just to kind of show you what services are being brought up. First is the actual Airflow UI. So that way we start browsing and executing DAGs and see the progress. You see the scheduler as well and the worker. And at the same time, you also see the Marquez backend and also the Marquez web. So the key thing here is that we need Marquez to start sending metadata. So that's why we need the HTTP server up. And in order to configure the Marquez backend, you need to set it up here. So there's 3 environment variables that you need to set. You need to set the Marquez backend as HTTP. You need to set the URL. And also you need to provide a namespace. So the example that I've been using is the food delivery example. So that this is going to create a namespace for us on the Marquez backend and start associating dataset and DAG metadata to that namespace. And if we go over and look at the DAGs, there's a DAG folder, and here you're going to see the different Airflow DAGs that we're going to be executing. And the one, so if I just click on one ETL order 7 days, you'll see that we're using the Marquez Airflow library. So what you end up doing is instead of putting Airflow import DAG, you're going to use Marquez _ Airflow. And then once DAG start executing, which we'll see, you'll begin to register job metadata, the inputs and outputs for the different operators. And for this example, it's specific to Postgres. So we're just going to be using the Postgres extractor that's part of the Marquez Airflow library to begin to extract metadata from the DAGs executing. And the way you actually install the DAG, install the Marquez Airflow library, you just provide a requirements.txt file. So in the example itself, you don't have to worry about that. Everything's going to be installed for you, but it's gonna install the latest version of the Marquez Airflow library. And so if we go to Airflow, let's see here, and we go to the homepage here. So we're installing the latest release, and here's more detail about what the Airflow library actually does for the integration that we're doing. Okay. And it also goes into the configuration steps. So all that's done for you in the example when we bring up the example. So I think by now, most likely, it's already set up. Yeah, cool. The worker's up, the scheduler, and the library should be installed. So if I do a quick setup here or a quick search, you'll see that the Airflow library was installed. Okay. All right. So if the first thing I'm going to do is look at Airflow. All right. So all of our DAGs. So in that DAG folder that I showed you here, they were imported and pulled in so we could start triggering them. And if we bring up and we look at the Marquez UI, we'll see at the same time that, yeah, it's an empty, there's no metadata. So if I do a search for like ETL, there's no data sets and there's no jobs. So the first thing I'm going to do is execute this new food deliveries job. And this one actually creates a bunch of different tables that we need. Right now I'm triggering them manually, but what I'm going to do in the PR is have this where the DAGs depend on each other. Right now I have to manage the dependency because it's a bit work in progress. So I'm going to trigger that, and what you'll see is that when the DAG completes, you should be able to then just do a search. And here we have the new food delivery DAG that executed and also the task associated with it. But here we kind of see that it's completed. That's great. There's nothing, there's no inputs and outputs. It's just creating tables for us to set up the example. One that's a bit more interesting is if you run the ETL restaurants. I'll do a little refresh here. Actually, I could look really quick at the code itself. Oops, sorry. All right. So in this one, it's a bit more interesting. It's actually doing, so if I zoom in here, it's actually querying a temp results table and inserting to a restaurants table. So here, there's a if not exist task that says if the table that I'm going to write to doesn't exist, create it. And this is the actual table that we're going to be parsing from the SQL, but at the same time, there's a cool feature that the extractor does have, which actually pulls the metadata for the table. So if I go and I look at the progress, I think it completed. Cool. And now I could do, if I just type in ETL, oops, I have to go back to the home page. Refresh it. Okay, yeah, so it looks like you have to do a hard refresh. So you'll start seeing that now we have data sets. So you'll have public restaurants and public temperate restaurants, which is from the SQL itself. So the extractor for Postgres does come with a pre-built-in SQL parser. So it looks at the inputs and output tables. So those have been extracted. But the cool thing as well is if you click on the public restaurants, you'll start seeing the columns that are associated with that. We're not pulling the descriptions yet because that's something we're working on, but at a minimum, you do get the types. So you get the address, you get the phone number. So all the columns here are now present. And then if I click on a few more DAGs, like the order kind of matters here because they depend on each other. So I'm going to go through these really quick so that we can start building out the lineage graph. So I've already ran the ETL restaurants. I'll do ETL menus. And when you're going to be running this example locally, when this PR is merged, you're not going to have to do this. It's all going to be, the DAGs are going to depend on each other, and naturally the graph will just build itself without having to worry about triggering these. But just because it's a bit work in progress, I'm manually triggering them. Okay, so we're going to start seeing more and more DAGs show jobs start showing up. It looks like I have to do a hard refresh. Yeah. And yeah, so you're going to start seeing the DAGs start showing up here. So every DAG has an either if not exist, then insert, because you have just ETL jobs. And then there's also an ETL, which actually does the extraction, transform, and load on the data we're trying to pull in. So if I click on this job, you kind of see the breakdown. You have the namespace. So if you remember in the Docker Compose file, we told Marquez, hey, create this food delivery namespace that I'm going to start associating my data sets and jobs with. And now we can kind of see very basic, like the ETL restaurants, it pulled from a temp table and it wrote to a public restaurants table. So the reason when we do the Postgres extractor does prefix the data sets with the schema. So that's something that, because you could have data sets in different schemas in Postgres. So you could have one in public, but you could have one that's maybe we even call it food delivery or analytics. So depending on the schema that's associated with the table, we prefix it. And I'm just going to run a few more so we could kind of see a more interesting DAG develop. So there's ETL menus, which we executed. There's ETL categories. Oh, and just a side thing, Peter, what I'm noticing is that the SQL isn't being displayed. I think because the one thing that we do in the Postgres extractor for the library, we do pull out the SQL. So it looks like it's not being displayed, but that's probably a minor bug. So that's just something I noticed. So I think let me see something. If I list the jobs, oops. Yeah, if I list the jobs, you do see in the context, you do see the SQL. And so here we're creating it. So it might be some minor thing we can look into.
Yeah, it's we can open up an issue for that.
Okay, great. Where's my notes here? Okay, category menu items. And so as these are running, you're going to start seeing more and more. Oops, that's interesting. Let me go back here. So you're going to start seeing more and more data sets show up for the different ETL jobs that I've ran. The one that's going to be really cool is when we finally get to the ETL order 7 days, you're going to start to see a more rich lineage graph with a lot more dependencies. So let's see, ETL orders. So let me just refresh again. Then ETL orders. Yeah. The reason why this one's interesting is because it's pulling from a number of different tables. So it does joins on a few tables that need to exist, right? So it does some inner joins. So this way you could kind of see it's going to have about three inputs to the job, and it's going to write to one output, which is just the order 7 day table. Okay, so this looks good. That's about done. And the last one is just the ETL order 7 days. Okay. And wait that to complete and let this execute. Hopefully it works. Yeah, that's good. It's been queued. Yeah, and just by demoing, Peter, I kind of saw a few things. So I could open up some issues around some of the stuff I saw as well, along with the SQL one. Okay.
For sure. I mean, I think the biggest thing with the UI is that we want to enable like a more just-in-time behavior, because you have to kind of refresh everything, this whole site to kind of get updates, which kind of is not really a desirable characteristic. So I think it's something, yeah, to improve upon over time. Okay,
great. Yeah, that's what I've been doing here. Okay. Yeah, but for the most part, you know, it's working. Okay, great. So you see we have the public order 7 days data set. So if you click on that, now you kind of get a really better view of all the different DAGs and how they depend on each other. So in this case, when we extract the metadata for the Postgres operator, or really any operator in Airflow, we look at the task. So the task itself is what really gets registered to the Marquez backend. So here, as we saw before in the code, the SQL's not here, but you can, if you remember, there was about 3 or 4 different tables that we were joining on, and then we were finally inserting into the order 7 days. So you do get the schema here, which is great. So placed on order ID and so forth. And at the same time, you could also click on the input data sets and grab their schema. And the job itself, you get the state. We're still working. There's a little bug around the location. So here you should be able to link out to a GitHub SHA and actually see the code that executed, but that's currently a work in progress. And yeah, that's it. If I click on the namespace, actually, I think that's another bug we need to work on. But yeah, that's all I had. All I had for the demo. And cool.
Nice. It's looking really good.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's go here, and I have to do a hard refresh again. And the cool thing is also, you know, you can kind of look at all the different jobs that executed and, you know, scan through them. All successful, which is great. Okay, yeah, now I'm done.
Hey, hi, John. I see you joined during the meeting.
Cool. Well,
hi, John.
Welcome.
Welcome. We can't hear you. I don't know if you are trying to say something.
How about now? Can you hear that?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah, we can hear you great.
All right. Thanks for holding it. I had some redirection problems. I thought this was being held on Meetup, but obviously it's not. Anyway, thanks for holding it. I missed the first part, but I'll go through the recording later.
Okay,
Yeah,
yeah.
we are recording it, so you'll be able. I'll post it. So now I figured out how to post these to YouTube, so you'll find it there.
Yeah,
Okay.
and great. Yeah, and I'm not sure when you kind of joined. Maybe it was like in between. And the one thing I'll just recap is, there's a working example that we're looking to merge into main very soon that really outlines the steps I took to get the lineage graph here. And yeah, that was it. So yeah, when that lands, and you kind of want to explore the integration that we're doing with Airflow and give us feedback, or maybe use it at your company or just for a side project. Always looking for feedback. Yeah.
Sure, I'll be looking to integrate it into something. We're not ready for Airflow yet, maybe later. We're still in a sandbox environment, and we're using, right at this point, a Docker Compose infrastructure and Swarm cluster. So we're integrating inside of what's called OpenFaaS. So it's a serverless framework, hoping to use that for the time being instead of Airflow, but we will probably migrate later.
Nice. Yeah. Very
So
cool.
so I understand I'll have to be reporting all my state entries into the Marquez as my jobs start up and stop. Currently, I'm using almost exclusively S3s, and I'm not sure if you're supporting that just yet.
No, it's a great question. We're not into that. That's something that's been brought up in our Slack channel, just in the community. It's something that we're working towards. I'm not sure, Julian, if you had more comments on that, but it's definitely an open discussion.
Yeah. So basically, you have this notion of data set, and it would be a minor improvement, or just adding a type to allow the S3. And it's definitely aligned with what we want it to be doing. John, what were you thinking? Is this something you would be, if you want to contribute that to Marquez, we'd be happy to help you get it merged in. Otherwise, it's something we'll be contributing in the future. But if something you need, you're welcome. It's not a big contribution. I don't know if that's the kind of thing you're interested in doing.
Sure. I'll have to talk to my management about all that. I'm contracting with a very large company that's, this is in one of their skunk works. So I'll have to talk about that. We've got to get our pipelines in together, first of all. And the other thing we're looking at is triggers. So that's the other thing, S3 support and triggering on, might say, data set arrivals.
Exactly right. Yeah.
I think that's on your roadmap.
Oh yeah, it is.
Yeah.
So Julian, event-based triggers as new data sets. So very similar model that S3 is doing. Yeah.
Yeah. So today, the way you can do that today is kind of pulling the API, which is not super great. But I think, yeah, you could totally have a update mechanism. I think Peter was experimenting with a WebSocket kind of approach.
Sure.
There's different things like to make this easier.
Sure.
Yeah, I mean, some of those things is on the roadmap. So typically as an open source project, first thing we do is make sure it's aligned with the project. So what you're describing is totally aligned with the project. And then it's a matter of, as an open source community, those things kind of can happen in parallel. It's kind of, it's at the conjunction of, in terms of prioritization, if someone wants to contribute it usually moves faster, right? Because
certainly, yeah. And I'm also in an independent company, so I can do this on my own as well. And I have to get the pipelines in together and for this particular project, and I'm very interested in how this can visualize data provenance, because I think that's the whole mission, right?
Yes. Yeah, and so I think you're on Slack. We've probably interacted on Slack already, and so if you have any questions, and we're very happy to, the goal is to facilitate contributions as well. And so, you know, I would recommend probably open an issue up front to kind of formalize a little bit what you have in mind. And then we're very happy to help those pull requests go through.
Sure. Yep.
Yeah.
And what's useful right now, I'm using S3 triggers or notifications, but it makes it a little weird when I have to wait for multiple data set arrivals. And that's really where Marquez could come in, where those can be maybe part of the triggering into Marquez, but we'll see. That's in the future. I'll look into it.
Yeah, that'd be interesting. Yeah, we do have, and I think maybe you've seen our API call, so that's probably what you're going to be using. But that'd be interesting. Yeah, an event triggers. You have a new something has been added to your S3 bucket, and then you could tell Marquez about it and collect that metadata. Yep. Very cool.
Or using the same format that S3 uses for notification would be really. And of course, you probably have to extend it to describe the data sets that have changed. But nevertheless, something very similar because everyone's used to it.
Yeah, that'd be nice. I think if you want to kind of have a short, you know, half page description of what you have in mind and put it in a GitHub issue for review, that would be a great start.
Sure, thank you. Will do.
Yeah, it would be because, you know, we've been talking about how we can make sources configurable. So there's discussion around that. But it's also good to get more feedback and seeing what the community really wants, a more flexible model. And it'd be great to get your thoughts and your approach and try to converge those ideas into
the idea of a source that triggers. I don't know if you have that concept yet, but that's sort of an interesting.
Yeah, I actually haven't thought about that yet. I mean, we could potentially call a webhook upon data set changes and have that schedulable in our interfaces as well. So there's a lot we can do with that. I don't think we've quite explored it so much either.
Right, great.
Nice. It was nice meeting you, John, in person. I mean, more in person than on Slack.
Sort of, yeah. My laptop is at my feet, so I've got my monitor up above, so you don't want to look at my ankles. So I'm not doing it.
Fair enough. Yeah. Okay.
That works. That works.
Right.
Yeah, and do we have any other questions? Because I think that was the agenda, right? Just kind of go through the example. I think try to get this merged in sometime this week or early next week to get people testing out the integration, and got some good insight from John on what how he's planning to use the Marquez API. So always exciting to hear different use cases. And
yeah, if we don't have any other question, we can also you know, adjourn the meeting.
Sounds good. All right.
All right. It was really nice, everyone.
Thank you very much. It was great.
Awesome. Yeah. And Julian, I guess you'll post a recording up shortly after and stuff. So
yeah, I'll post the recording, and also I'll make sure I'm not the only one who can, you know, post the recordings. But yeah, I'll put the recording for sure.
Okay, sounds good. All right, guys. Well,
see you, everyone. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you.
Have a good day.